how to get started, but it's impossible to go over every single rule in this game, but all the rules can be found in these places. Secondly, Kill Team is a very rules-dense and complicated game. Hopefully we won't be making any rules errors in this how to play video, but in case we do, we will pin a comment to this YouTube video containing all rules corrections necessary. So be sure to check that out just in case.
There are a few different ways to play Kill Team, from highly competitive tournament-style matches all the way to narrative, co-op, and single-player missions. One great thing about this new edition is that no matter which way you're going to choose to play, all of the rules remain the same. For today, we're going to be using approved ops. This is the most common way to play in pickup games or at any structured tournament events. To win a game of approved ops, you'll need to have more victory points than your opponent at the end of the game. The three main ways to score are the crit op, the kill op, and the tack op. The crit op is the main mission that both players will try to score throughout the game. The tack op is a secret mission that you will reveal to your opponent throughout the game. The kill op is scored by incapacitating enemy operatives. This chart will show you how many points you score based on how many operatives are killed. The final way to score is the primary op, but we'll go over this later when it comes up.
There's one more thing we'll need to play Kill Team, and that's to pick our kill teams. At the time of filming this video, there are nearly 50 different kill teams to choose from, and they encompass almost every single faction from the Warhammer 40k universe. These teams cover a diverse range of playstyles, model counts, and narrative flavors, but for today, I'm going to be playing the brand new Space Marine kill team, the Angels of Death. First things first, I need to figure out how to build my team. According to the rules here, I'm able to select an Assault Intercessor Sergeant as my leader. He'll be joined by 4 Assault Intercessor Warriors and 1 Assault Intercessor Grenadier. Each team has one or multiple unique faction rules. For the Space Marines in the Angels of Death, one of these rules is Chapter Tactics. For today's game, I'll be keeping things simple by taking Aggressive and Resolute. Next, I get to select my equipment. In Kill Team, you select 4 pieces of equipment to be active for your entire team. Every faction has access to a list of universal equipment, as well as faction-specific equipment tailored to their specific playstyle. Today, I'm going to go with Explosive Grenades and Utility Grenades from the Universal Equipment list, and then select Purity Seals and a Chapter Reliquary from my team's faction-specific equipment list.
I'm going to be in control of the Blades of Cain kill team. They're a fast-moving, hard-hitting group of Eldari aspect warriors with a range of special skills. My leader is going to be a striking Scorpion Exarch, and then I'm just going to fill out my ranks with some Dire Avengers, Striking Scorpions, and Howling Banshees. My faction rule is called Aspect Techniques, and it's not really going to come into play until we're in the middle of the fighting, so I'll go over that later. For equipment, I've decided to go with a bunch of universal options. I'm going to use the Razor Wire, ladders, a heavy barricade, and utility grenades.
So now that we know what teams we're playing and what game mode we're going to use, we need to select a crit op and set up the battlefield. Today, the crit op we're going to be using is Secure. We'll be using Killzone Vocus, layout number 2, found in the Approved Ops deck of cards. So we'll set up the terrain and objectives accordingly. Next, we'll roll off to see who gets the pre-game initiative. Alright, so Vic rolls higher here and wins initiative, so he can now decide to pick a side of the board and keep initiative, or give up the initiative and let me pick whichever side I want. He decides to keep initiative for himself and selects the left side of the board to be his side for this game.
Now, we both gain 2 command points, which we can use for ploys later, and we secretly select our tack op for the game. Your tack op can be any of the options that match one of your team's archetypes. Each tack op will tell you how to score it and when to reveal it to your opponent. Before we set up our operatives, we alternate setting up any physical equipment we have. Brad hasn't selected any, so I'm going to put down my Razor Wire, ladders, and heavy barricade. Next, we alternate setting up our operatives. The rules tell us we set up 1/3 of our kill team at a time, and every operative enters the game with a concealer. We'll explain what that means later.
Now we only have one more thing to do before we can get on with the bloodshed, and that's the scouting phase. In the scouting phase, each player secretly selects one of 3 scouting options. These options all provide pre-game bonuses and also determine who gets initiative in the first turning point. I reveal option 1, which is equip, and Vic reveals option 2, which is ploy. According to this graphic here, 1 beats 2, which means I'll choose who gets initiative. I'm going to give it to Vic for turning point 1, and then the game begins.
Kill Team is played in 4 turning points. In each turning point, players take turns activating each of their operatives one at a time until both teams have none left to activate. Each turning point has a strategy phase and then a firefight phase, and each must be completed in order and in full, and then the turning point ends. In approved ops, both players secretly select a primary op during the first strategy phase. This is a secret decision to focus on one of the 3 ways to score. At the end of the game, we'll both reveal our selections and see how many extra points we did. Now, we get the chance to spend our command points on strategy ploys or use any abilities that happen in the strategy phase. I'm going to play the ploy Forewarned for 0 command points because I selected the scouting option that allows that. This will just give me some rerolls for when Brad shoots any of my operatives. Brad is going to pass and save his CP. I'm going to pass as well, and since we both passed, we can now move on to the firefight phase. Each activation in the firefight phase follows a few simple steps. First, you determine the order. Here, you're going to select if this operative will have a conceal or an engage order. If they're concealed, they can't shoot or charge enemies, but they'll be safe from incoming shots as long as they're in cover. If they're engaged, they can perform any of the universal actions, but are more exposed to enemy attacks. Next, you perform actions. Each action costs action points, and each operative has an action point limit on their data card. You can do any number of actions without going over that limit or repeating actions in an activation, unless there's a rule that specifically allows it. Finally, you flip over the token to the darkened side, showing that your operative is expended, and no longer eligible to activate this turning point. Now, for the first activation of the game, I'm going to select this Howling Banshee Warrior. I'll choose to retain her conceal order to keep her safer, and then I'm going to reposition up to the objective marker. When moving in Kill Team, all measurements are rounded up to the nearest inch. So, I'll measure 1 full inch to move out from the wall, and then use my remaining 6 inches of movement in a straight line to get up to the objective. Then, I'm going to do a 3-inch dash movement to get into safety behind this barricade. Even though I have 3 APL, I'm not going to do anything with my last one, so I'll just flip over the order to show that I'm expended.
Now, for my first activation, I'm going to choose to activate one of my Intercessor Warriors. This Intercessor in the back of the ruin here is next to a door, so he's going to reposition through the door. The door is considered accessible, so operatives can move through it, although it does cost an extra inch to do so. This Intercessor has a move stat of 6 inches, so they'll use 1 inch to go through the door and then be left with 5 inches of movement to move forward on the other side of this ruin. Then, for a second action, this Intercessor will dash. Finally, with his last action, my Intercessor will pass. He'll flip his order marker to show that he's expended, and his activation concludes.
With my next activation, I'm going to move one of my striking Scorpions through this door, and then dash into hiding behind this heavy barricade.
Okay, it's my turn again. This Intercessor is going to reposition and dash up to this objective. When I started this activation, I chose to switch from a conceal order to an engage order.
Well, now since I finally have a target, this Howling Banshee is going to reposition, dash, and then shoot at Brad's Intercessor. So looking at the data card, we can see that my Shuriken pistol has a range of 8 inches, which this Intercessor is well within. This weapon profile is showing me that I have 4 attacks, and that every result of a 3 or higher is a success. So, I roll my 4 dice, and I'm left with 3 successes. Results of 6 are counted as critical successes, and because of the rending weapon rule this pistol has, because I've rolled at least 1 crit, I can upgrade one of my normals to a critical success. So, after all of that, I'm left with 1 normal success and 2 crits.
Now it's my turn to roll defense dice. When rolling defense dice, 3 dice are rolled by the defending player. Looking at the data card for my Assault Intercessor, I can see that I have a save stat of 3+, so I'll be retaining successes on results of 3 or higher.
Here at Noble Knight Games, we've been carefully growing the world's largest selection of tabletop games going on.
Of 3+, so I'll be retaining successes on results of 3 or higher. I roll 3 successes, and just like in the attack roll, that 6 means one of them is a critical success. Now I'm going to allocate my successes to block Vic's successes. A normal success cannot block a critical success, but I can use 2 normal successes to block a critical success, so I'll do that. Then I'll use my critical success to block Vic's second critical success. That leaves 1 normal success unblocked.
So over on the Banshee's data card, we can see that the damage profile on her pistol is 3-4. The first number is how much damage is dealt by a normal hit, while the second one shows how much is dealt by a crit. In this case, I'll be dealing just 3 damage to Brad's Intercessor, bringing his remaining wounds down to 11.
The most common way people track an operative's remaining wound total is by placing 6-sided dice near them. I'll place a couple here now to show that this Intercessor has 11 wounds remaining. Alright, well I have a bit of a boring activation on the other side of the board now. This Space Marine is going to reposition and dash up to safety, and then end their activation with a pass.
Next, I'm going to activate the Striking Scorpion Warrior. First up, I'll do a reposition action and climb over this terrain in front of me. Vertical distance while climbing is always counted as a minimum of 2 inches, even if the actual distance measured is less than that. Otherwise, it's rounded up to the nearest inch. In this case, the height of the terrain is exactly 2 inches, so it'll cost 2 inches of movement to climb. Once my operative has climbed, it's going to need to drop down the other side. The first 2 inches of vertical distance measured when dropping is always ignored, with additional distance measured as normal. In this case, with the height of the terrain measuring exactly 2 inches, my operative can drop for free. So, after it pays the 2 inches to climb over this thing, my Striking Scorpion can move 5 inches horizontally. Then, I'll measure another 3 inches for a dash action, move into safety, and pass the rest of my activation.
Now it's my turn again, and I'm going to activate another Assault Intercessor Warrior. First, I'll swap my Conceal Order to an Engage Order, and then dash through this door. Then, I'll reposition up to this building, and with my last action, I'll throw a Crack Grenade at Vic's Banshee. This Crack Grenade isn't on my data card, but since I selected it as part of my equipment loadout, I can throw up to 2 Crack Grenades this game, coming from any of my operatives. So, I'm rolling 4 attack dice, and I'm hitting on 4s. That's 2 normal successes. Normally, when an operative rolls defense dice, they always roll 3 dice. However, because of the Crack Grenade's Piercing 1 special rule, in this case, Victor will only be rolling 2 dice. This Banshee has a save stat of 4 up, but both of Vic's results are below 4. This means both of my successes will deal damage for a total of 8. On the Banshee's data card, we can see that it has a wound stat of 8. With 0 wounds remaining, this operative is now incapacitated and is removed from the board.
Next, I'm going to activate one of my Dire Avenger Warriors. I'm going to start by repositioning up both of these ladders. They allow me to count any of the vertical distance I travel using them as only 1 inch, so I've got more than enough movement to get all the way up to this top vantage point. Then, I'm going to take a shot at Brad's Intercessor down on the ground. Because that Intercessor has an Engage Order here, and I'm shooting him from a vantage point that's at least 4 inches higher, I'm going to get accurate 2, which means I can retain 2 of my attack dice as normal successes without even having to roll. The full rules for vantage points are on page 60 of the core rulebook. I highly recommend checking them out to make sense of it for yourself. My first shot is pretty bad here, and then when Brad goes to roll his defense save, he gets to auto-retain one as a successful save because he's in cover. In Kill Team, cover can be a bit of a complicated and daunting process, and you'd definitely be best served by checking this out for yourself in the core rules. For right now, the long and short of it is that because there's a piece of intervening terrain within an inch of Brad's Intercessor, he'll have a bit of an improved defense save.
Thankfully, I get a great roll, and I take no damage here.
Now, I'm going to spend one of my command points on a firefight ploy called Starfall. This is going to let this Dire Avenger make a second shoot action, which would normally be illegal. My second shot is much better. Thanks to rending and accurate 2, I'm going to end up with 3 crits and a normal hit. Even though Brad auto-retains a save because he's in cover, he is still going to take 11 wounds from my successful, unblocked hits, and that's going to bring him down to 0 HP, and I'll incapacitate that Space Marine. Now we'll take a look at the kill grade chart, and since Brad only has 6 units to begin with, killing this first one is going to move me up a kill grade, and I'm going to score a victory point.
Well, it's time for another pretty boring activation from me again. My Assault Intercessor Grenadier is going to reposition and dash over here into cover, and then pass.
I'm going to activate another Howling Banshee. I'm going to climb over this terrain and then dash into light cover.
I'm going to go with my Sergeant now. First things first, I'm going to change to an engage order, and then dash and reposition up here behind cover. With my last action, I'll pass, but now that I have an engage order, I'm hoping I'll get a chance to do a little more later on this turn.
I'm going to activate my last Dire Avenger now. I'll move through this accessible door and then shoot Brad's Sergeant. I get a great roll here, but Brad will auto-retain a save for cover, and then roll 2 critical saves and only take 4 wounds, so his Sergeant is still at 11.
Well, it's my turn to activate now, but I'm all out of ready operatives. So, I'll take this opportunity to counteract with my Sergeant. When it's your turn to activate a ready operative, if all of your operatives have been expended but your opponents have not, you can counteract. When you counteract, you can pick a friendly operative that hasn't counteracted yet this turning point to perform a 1 AP action for free. The only caveat here is that if you move, you can't move more than 2 inches. I'm going to shoot with my plasma pistol, and as you can see on my data card, this weapon has 2 profiles. For this shot, I'm going to choose the supercharged profile. I check my ranges, and I'm within 8 inches, so I roll my dice, and I'm left with 1 critical success and 1 normal success. I think I can do better here, so I'm going to spend 1 of my command points on the Universal Firefight ploy Command Reroll. Unlike other ploys, there is no once per turning point limit on how many times you can play the Command Reroll ploy. However, you can't reroll a die that you've already rerolled. So I spend my CP, and I roll a 5, which is great because my supercharged plasma pistol has the lethal 5-up rule. This means that I retain critical hits on a 5 or higher instead of a 6 or higher. So I'm left with 2 critical hits and 1 normal hit. This gun has the Piercing 1 special rule, so Victor is only rolling 2 defense saves. He saves my normal hit, but my 2 critical hits go through, dealing 10 damage, and Victor's Dire Avenger is incapacitated. Now, since this weapon also has the Hot special rule, after the roll is resolved, I have to roll a d6, and if I roll low, I might take some damage. But luckily here, I'm safe.
Well, with the last activation of the turning point, my Striking Scorpion is just going to reposition up to the inside of this door so I can maybe make a charge at the beginning of the next one.
Alright, Victor, well, we finished our first turning point.
At the end of the turning point, the score is going to be 1-all, with both of us scoring 1 point from the kill op. The crit op that we selected can't be scored in turning point 1, and neither of us have revealed our tac op yet, so that's all we've got on the board.
Well, before we go on, we just want to say a big thanks to Skirmish Mats. They sent us an early copy of one of their new mats with this beautiful mossy cobblestone design. It works so well with the new Volcus terrain set, and it'll be up for pre-order soon, so keep your eyes peeled. If you're interested in getting your hands on any Skirmish mat, you can use our affiliate link that can be found in the description of this video. Alright, now on to Turning Point 2.
At the beginning of turning point 2, we roll for initiative, and Brad wins. So he'll receive 1 command point at the beginning of the turning point, and I'll be given 2 because I don't have the initiative. So rolling on with the strategy phase, Brad's going to play Assault Doctrine for free because of his Sergeant's ability, and I'm going to play Ruthless Poise. Then, Brad's going to reveal his tac op, which is Champion. He's going to select his Sergeant for that. Then, we both pass and move on to the firefight phase.
For my first activation, I'm going to choose my Sergeant. I'll start off by charging. When an operative charges, it can move a distance equal to its movement stat plus an additional 2 inches. When it does so, it must end its movement within control range of an enemy operative. Control range is 1 inch. Now that our operatives are within control range of each other, I'm going to spend my second action fighting. Fighting is a little bit different than shooting. After I declare my target, both my operative and my opponent's operative need to select a melee weapon. Then, no saves are rolled here. Each player rolls attack dice simultaneously using their melee weapon profiles.
At Monument Hobbies, our team of Mondo brains scientifically and
I can upgrade one of my normal hits to a critical hit here because of the rending rule, and because of the combat doctrine I played during the strategy phase this turn, I have balanced as well, which will give me a reroll. Now, once all dice have been rolled, starting with the attacker, which is the operative that initiated the fight action, players take turns resolving one of their dice. When you resolve a die, you can either choose to strike or block. When you choose to strike, you deal that die's damage, and then the die is discarded. If you choose to block, you can discard one of your opponent's dice, and then the die you blocked with is also discarded. When blocking, a normal success can block a normal success, and a critical success can block a normal success or a critical success. Unlike with shooting, you can't use 2 normals to block a crit. In this case, I'll start by striking with a crit, then Vic strikes with a crit, and then I strike with another crit and get the kill. All the remaining dice are discarded. Now, even though I got the kill here, I did take some damage, and my sergeant is now down to 6 wounds remaining. But I have 1 action left, and I'm going to use it to shoot Vic's Dire Avenger, up in the sniper's nest. I'll use my plasma pistol with the supercharged profile again. I got a good roll, but because I have less than half of my wounds remaining, I'm injured. When an operative is injured, you subtract 2 inches from its move stat and worsen the hit stat of its weapons by 1. So on this shot, instead of hitting on 3s or higher, I'm hitting on 4s or higher. Luckily though, because I rolled only 4s or higher, it doesn't matter here. Vic only saves 1 normal hit, and this Dire Avenger is incapacitated. Since I shot with the supercharged profile, and that profile has the hot special rule, I still have my hot roll to contend with. When you make a hot roll, you roll 1d6. If you roll a number lower than your weapon skill, you take damage equal to double the result. I roll a 3, and my weapon skill is 3. Unfortunately, like I said, I'm injured, and actually, right now, my weapon skill is 4. So I immediately take damage equal to double the result, which is 6 damage, and Victor, I had 6 health left, so I'm dead. Well, I did get 2 kills before I died, so luckily, I do score 2 points for champion this turning point.
That was pretty demoralizing, but I've still got a bunch of elves left, so my Howling Banshee over here is going to activate next. First, I'm going to do the mission action for the crit off, which is secure. Then, I'm going to charge and fight this Assault Intercessor. Brad's Intercessor is going to be hitting on 1 worse because of my Banshee's ability. Luckily, Brad didn't get a single hit here, so I can just resolve these dice however I want. With my first normal success here, I'm going to implant the enemy operative and reveal my tack on it. This immediately scores me a victory point, and I still have 3 more dice to play with. So then I can attack with the remaining 2 crits and a hit, which will do 16 total damage to this Intercessor, easily incapacitated.
Well, I can't stand for that, so I'm going to activate my other warrior nearby and shoot that Banshee. You're automatically retaining 1 for cover here. Get a good roll, and you take no damage. But I have 2 actions left, so I'm going to charge you, and then we'll fight. It's going to be 2 crits because of my rending special rule, plus balanced from my doctrine. And now, I'll start by dealing 5 damage with a crit, I'll take 6 from one of your crits, and then I'll finish you off with another crit.
Alright, well, I will activate another Howling Banshee now, and I'm going to reposition and take a shot at this warrior of Brad's. Now, not only is he within cover, but he's also obscured in this shot.
An operative is considered obscured if there is intervening heavy terrain between them and their attacker, but only if at least part of that terrain is further than 1 inch from both operatives.
When shooting an obscured operative, the attacker has to discard one of their successes, and they're not able to retain any critical successes and have to downgrade any rolled crits to normals instead. Now, even though I got a great roll with rending, which would normally be 3 crits, I've got to remove one of those and downgrade the crits to normal, so I'm only left with 2 normal hits here.
I'll be auto-retaining 1 save here for being in cover, and then even though I get a terrible defense roll, I'll still only take a total of 3 damage. With Vic's final action, he's going to dash away like a coward. Now from this angle, his Howling Banshee won't be visible to my intercessor, so I won't be able to shoot it, but I'm still close enough to be able to charge and fight. Hitting on 4s again because of your special ability, and we both get okay rolls.
Before we resolve dice here, I'm going to use one of my aspect techniques, which is the Blades of Cain faction ability. I'm going to select Scream That Steals, which allows me to resolve a die first before combat starts, as long as I use it to block.
So Victor starts off by blocking, then I hit, Victor blocks again, and then Victor hits with his last hit, so at the end of this fight, we've each taken 4 damage. Since both of these operatives are within control range of another operative, they cannot shoot, charge, reposition, or dash. The only way to get out of control range would be to perform the 2 AP action, Fall Back. Additionally, enemy operatives cannot be shot if they're within control range of a friendly operative.
Next, I'll activate this Striking Scorpion and charge this Intercessor. I'm going to fight, and I'll still have Ceaseless thanks to Ruthless Poise. Brad's still going to have Balance thanks to Assault Duck.
Before we even fight, Vic deals 2 damage directly to my Marine because of the Striking Scorpion's Mandiblaster's ability.
So, we both use our dice to strike here, and I'm going to kill Brad, and he'll only be able to do 5 damage to me on his way out.
Alright, a simple activation for me here. I'm going to dash and secure this objective, which is hidden behind the building, but trust me, it's there. And then I'll reposition forward and end my activation concealed and in light cover.
So typically, being in cover with a Conceal Order would make that Grenadier safe. But, since I have access to this vantage point, my Striking Scorpion Exarch is able to take a shot. So while selecting my target, because I'm more than 2 inches higher on a vantage point, Brad can't use light cover to prevent this operative from getting shot. However, because he's got a Conceal Order in light cover, not only is he allowed to auto-retain 1 normal success as a save, but he can either upgrade it to a crit or retain 2 normal hits. And because he's got a Conceal Order instead of an Engage Order, I don't get accurate 1 on this shot like I did earlier. So, I roll my dice, and thanks to Rending, I end up with 2 crits and a hit. Brad's going to auto-retain a critical save for cover, and then miss with the other 2 and take 7 damage. Almost injured here, but just not quite.
Well, that's the end of the second turning point, Vic, and a lot happened. We've each secured 1 objective, so we score 1 VP from the crit op each. I got my 2 points from Champion, so I have 2 points from my TAC op, and you just scored 1 point from Implant. We each have 3 victory points apiece from the kill op, and so that puts the current score at 6-5 for the Space Marines.
So instead of grinding through the rest of this game at a snail's pace, we're just going to quickly play out the remaining 2 turning points and then catch up with you at the end.
No one seems to know this, but Amazon actually has a $50 million fund that they have to pay out every single month. And here's how...
And then catch up with you at the end. So unfortunately, my fragile elves kind of crumbled under the pressure of the Space Marines, and I had a pretty rough last 2 turning points. So, at the end of the game, Brad scored 3 points for his crit op to my 2, 6 points for his kill op to my 3, and 4 points for his tac op to my 1. Then, we both revealed our primary op. I selected the crit op for mine, and Brad selected the tac op for his. So I get an extra 1 point at the end of the game, and he gets an extra 2, bringing the final score up to a pretty brutal 15-7.
But it's worth noting here that this is obviously a how to play video, and we made a lot of bad moves just to show off the rules, so don't come for Victor in the comments.
So, if you like what you see, and you're interested in learning more about Kill Team, check out the rest of our battle reports to see how some more of the teams play and what a more competitive game looks like.
And like we mentioned at the top of this video, there are a ton of rules in Kill Team, and we only scratched the surface here. We covered the basics, but we would definitely recommend that you check out the core rules for yourself to keep learning.
Huge thanks to our patrons for keeping the lights on here at Mountaainside Tabletop, and to everyone else who clicks on these videos and watches them to the end.
You've got to have a shout out for all our patrons, especially our 1 HP gangsters and mountain goats. Truly, we owe all our success to our patrons. Well, thanks for watching. Hopefully this video was helpful, and I guess we'll see you in the next one. Bye!